Hi everyone, it's Josh Counsel here again for FX Warehouse. Today we're going to be doing another tutorial. We're going to be applying the Andorian inspired prosthetic, which is similar to what you would find in the Star Trek franchise. All of the products that you'll see in the tutorial today can be purchased online at FX Warehouse. The website address is fxwarehouse, one word, .net. We'll go through just in a moment all of the different bits and pieces that we'll be using. But before we start, I just wanted to give a word of recommendation for FX Warehouse. They're a wonderful company. They have very, very fast shipping. They have lots of products. They have pretty much everything you would need as an FX artist. I use them a lot. I refer my students to them. And I recommend them to you as a wonderful resource and place to be able to purchase your supplies. So without further ado, let's get on with the tutorial. Okay, so here we have our workstation. We have two pallets. I like having two pallets, one that I can keep my makeup on, one if I want to put any glues or any Pros-Aide creams, that type of thing on. We have different assortment of brushes, which we'll go over during the tutorial. We have our prosthetic and the two antennae that come with it that insert into the little slots here. We have the latex wedges. Powder, I'm just using baby powder today. If you want to be a little bit more fancy, or if it's for something a little nicer, you can use no color powder. We have Pros-Aide adhesive. Any acrylic emulsion adhesive will do. Or if you want to use Telesis adhesive, you can do that as well. We have some of the Thom Surprenant Andorian blue Pax paint. We have alcohol. We have a couple of different sponges. One, I just cut this in half. They normally come kind of round. I cut them in half. And this one, which is a Stipple sponge, which I just got some scissors and kind of rounded off so there's no hard edges there. We have Wolf blue and Wolf white, which we'll be using later, and some Q-tips. We also have the Pros-Aide remover, Telesis Super Solve. You don't necessarily need anything quite this big, and some paper towel just for cleanup. And we'll also be doing a little bit of other stuff later, which we'll talk about when we get there. The grease paint that we're using here is RCMA brand. The brand really doesn't matter. I've got a couple of different, or 3 different tones of blue, which we'll be using for shading and for some detail work. And you can use pretty much whatever your budget can afford. So we're ready to start our prosthetic application today. This is the lovely Joni Broses, who's going to be our model. And the first step that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the prosthetic is going to fit her. I've done this in advance, but I'll show you how to do it. So we put it in place. This one here, it should sit right on the bridge of the nose here. It will get a little tight in on the eyes. She's got a very small face, but then we've got to make sure that these come up here and don't go up into the hairline. So we can see that that's going to fit. It's going to be a little tight around the eyes, but it'll be fine because it's very thin there. And what we're going to do is grab one of the wedges with some baby powder, and I'm just going to tap in around there. And what this does is creates an outline, which is a non-permanent outline, so that when we go to glue this on in just a moment, we're not having to worry about whether or not we've got the placement correct. So when I remove that, you can see that that's got the outline here, so that when we're placing our initial glue, it's not going to cause a problem. The first step to gluing a prosthetic on is called anchoring the piece. And usually that's done, depending on where the piece sits on the face, usually that's done in the center. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue here. I like to avoid getting glue in the actual eyebrows. It's a little unpleasant to try and remove for the actor or the model. So if you can get a little bit of glue on either side, if they raise their eyebrow, it's still going to react the same as if it was glued down. If the piece is very, very tight on the eyebrow and you have to glue it on there, that is fine. But in this instance, we don't, so I'm not going to do that. So we've got a little bit of glue there. Then what we do is we find our placement again using our line, and then we just gently press down. And that piece is now anchored in place. Next is to glue the rest of the piece down. So what we do is we peel this back to the point where we can see it's glued. You don't want to pull back too much past that, because what that can do is it can actually hurt the skin. The glue is exceptionally strong, and if you just yank it back too hard, you can remove the dead layers of skin, and that can irritate the skin and cause welts and problems with the skin. So we just pull it back till we see that it's going to be pulling, and we'll just add a little bit in here, and then fold it back and press down. Pull it back again. You don't want to go near the blending edge. You want to keep the edges free from glue for the moment. And then we do the same on the other side. Remember not to pull back too far on the appliance. Make sure that's pretty even. And then we do the underside. Now these are looking like they're kind of getting in her eyes a little bit, so I'm just going to pluck those edges just a little more, just to try it. And then it's just a matter of getting up in there with your brush or with a Q-tip. And again, avoid the eyebrows if you can. It's really important to explain to your model or your actor while you're doing this what you're doing, so that if you're going to be putting glue on the eyelids, you don't want them to open their eyes and have their eyelids glue open, because this will come up and sort of glue this like this, and then they're going to have a hard time. So just make sure that you're always communicating with them to make sure that they know when they can and can't open their eyes. Usually I'll tell them not to open their eyes until I've powdered their eyes, and then that way they'll know that as soon as I've powdered it, they'll be okay to open them. Now it's time to glue down the edges. So you can see that if I put my thumb here and pull back, it lifts the edge up, and that lifts it enough that we can actually just get the glue brush in underneath the edges and glue them down. Always go from the piece across the edge this way. Never go along the edge, because it'll make it wrinkle. So you always want to go off on a direct perpendicular angle to the edge. So you can see that that's going just a tiny bit into the hair here. I'm just going to just tack that down a little bit here. We can remove that later when we finish the makeup. That's getting a little sticky there, so I'm just going to just get rid of that with the powder. We're going to be putting a wig on her, so I'm not going to bother gluing too much of that up into the hair there. I just needed to make sure that the base of it was secured so that it would support the weight of the antennae that we'll be putting on in a little bit. Next, we're going to work our edge a little bit with a Q-tip. I've just dipped it in a little bit of alcohol. You don't want to have it dripping wet, especially if we're working around the eye area, because the fumes, or it may run down into their eye, and that's never a good thing. So it's just kind of dip it in. If you need to roll off the excess, you can. But basically, we're just going to go around the edge and make sure there's no wrinkles or any little bits and pieces that are going to look weird. And make sure that that's blended in really nicely into the skin. Again, be really, really careful around the eye area with alcohol. You don't want to have it where it can possibly run into their eye or have the fumes cause problems. The next step that we need to do is to seal the foam. Foam latex likes to absorb, just like any sponge. And those of you who have used any of these foam latex wedges for your makeup applications just regularly, or for theater or whatever, will know that they absorb a lot of product. And the foam latex prosthetic is no different. So we're going to take a little bit of this PAX paint and we're just going to stipple that on. Now, theoretically, you can PAX out the whole face. Just put PAX over the whole face. It is really difficult to remove, so it's best, in my opinion, not to do that if you can help it. But it is something that you can do. And basically, we just make sure that the whole foam is covered. Do not fill in the little holes here though, because we want the antennae to glue to the foam latex, not to the PAX paint. So we need to leave those free from PAX. And then we very carefully around the eyes, and we just run it off the edge just a little bit, just, you know, maybe a centimeter or, you know, quarter, eighth of an inch. We don't want to have PAX just going crazy here. So it may take a couple of layers to get the coverage that you want. So bear that in mind. And again, try and avoid getting a lot of this PAX in the hair. It's a little difficult to remove because it does have a glue mixed in with it. You can dry that with a hairdryer or let it air dry, it doesn't really matter. Some PAXes, depending on the brand, some stay a little tacky. This particular brand isn't so bad, it's pretty good. So we just want to make sure that that's not the case. If it is a little tacky, you might want to just get a little baby powder or something and just brush a little bit over with your wedge so that you're not fighting the stickiness of the PAX paint. Next, we're going to base out the rest of the skin. If you chose to PAX it all out, then you're already done. So you can ignore this next section. What I'm going to be doing for just the sake of her comfort and ease of removal is I'm going to be using the Wolf Blue, the Wolf Light Blue, with a damp sponge. And I'm just going to basically base out the rest of it. Now you can notice that I'm not swiping. When you swipe, you get streaks in the makeup. So I'm actually stippling it in there so that it actually gives you a better coverage. Now this particular brand, it goes on a little lighter and then it dries darker. So it's just a matter of giving it a minute to darken up. And what we may end up doing is just kind of stippling some of this over the top of the PAX just to help kind of blend off the actual full color so that it matches a little better. If you ever need to guide the head or have them move it, don't put your hand on it and scrunch it around. Just sort of guide it by the back of the head and the jaw. It's a little bit more comfortable, and you get a better result. They'll end up not fighting you on it so much. Someone putting their hand on your head and scrunching it to the side always kind of sucks for them. Make sure you get behind the ears, you know, any skin that's going to be exposed. We're going to be putting a wig on her later because Andorians typically have white hair, and so we're going to be putting a white wig on. So I'm not overly fussed too much about the hairline because that's going to be covered up with the wig. But in case anyone sees the ears, I do like to have them kind of at least done so that it's thorough. I'm just using this filbert brush to get in there. It's nice and soft, it gives good coverage, fast coverage. You can see that stippling also gives you a kind of nice skin texture look. The next step is we need to paint our antennae. So I'm just going to get some of this Pax, and I'm just going to basically just sponge it on so it's all nice and even. And again, you've got this little flange at the bottom. You don't want to get it so much in there because we want the glue to be glued to the plastic rather than to the actual Pax paint. But it is important that you probably want to get a couple of layers of this on there so that it's nice and blue. We don't want to see any of the white through it, and make sure that we get that sponge right into those little creases so that there's no white showing through there either. I got a little bit of glue down on that flange, so I've just got a little bit of alcohol, and I'm just cleaning that off so that the plastic is clean. Take a Q-tip with some glue on it. You can use Pros-Aide or whatever we glued the prosthetic on with, which is what I'm using today. If it's going to be something that you find you're going to need it to be really strong, you probably want to get a telesis. But we're going to apply that all in there. Nice liberal coat. And we're going to apply it right around the bottom half of this. Most prosthetic adhesives are actually designed to be contact adhesive. So they're designed to have the glue applied to both halves, then dried, and then put together. So I'm just going to dry these off a little bit. Now, Andorians seem to have a little discrepancy as to whether these go like this, whether they go like this, whether they go like this. It really is up to your own personal preference. I'm going to just have mine facing forward. And we just put those down into there like that. And with a little bit of Pax, I'm just going to kind of make sure I hit any areas that aren't painted. Next, we're going to do some shading. We're going to use the blue, this medium one, and we're going to just bring in a little bit of a cheekbone here, a little bit of some shadowing here. Side here. Make sure they're even. You can also do this with an airbrush. It would make it probably a little finished and smooth, but not everybody has access to that, so we'll do it with grease paint today. Going to take just a clean little brush and just kind of blend all of that off. Just help sort of smudge it down a little bit. I'm going to take some of these other blues, just close. I'm going to do some kind of fashiony look on the eyelids. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to get some of the white wolf, and I've kind of watered it down, made it a little washy, and I just want to do a little bit of just light kind of spatteriness on here. I have to fix up those eyes, but just to sort of break up the skin tone a little bit, give it a little texture, and it'll help blend in some of that shading that we did. Makes it look a little more skin-like. Softens everything down. The Andorians have a little bit of a pinky thing inside the top of this. So I'll just take a little bit of pink grease paint. You can use pretty much any kind of pink color. That's just to make sure that gets that little bit of pink in there so that it's accurate. So the last part is that we are going to give her some eyebrows. Now Andorians have these weird kind of eyebrows that kind of peek up a little bit. You can do it with a hair, gluing some hair in. I think it looks a little masculine for myself. So I'm just going to go in here and just lightly paint in some eyebrows. And we're done. So we're going to go now. I'm going to do a little bit of basing out down here. We're going to throw some elements together to get a completed look, including a white wig, and we'll come back and we'll see you with the final look. Okay, so that's the end of our tutorial for today. Don't forget to visit fxwarehouse.net for all your makeup supplies, and we'll see you in the next tutorial.